Hi guys, it's Jen with Spirited Saturdays, and before I start this video, I just want to tell you all how much I love Saturdays because I wake up and I eat breakfast and I go to the coffee shop and I sit down with my laptop and I make notes for the video and I get into the zone and I think about the video and I do some other things, but I focus on the video and well, I've mentioned that. And then I finish that and I come back here and I have my cup of coffee with me and I do the video, and I'm enjoying this pulse, this rhythm I've gotten into. It's very nice, and the weather's really nice today too. I have to tell you, it's a gorgeous day. It's my favorite kind of weather. It feels like it's going to rain. That's my favorite kind of weather. So now on to the video. So this week we are continuing talking about disclosing our eating disorders to others, and and I wanted to just let you guys know that last week in my video, I went a lot into this week's topic, and I realized afterwards that I went ahead. And so if you really want to know how I feel, or my take on this week's topic of really letting people know and figuring out why you're telling them, and if that's a good idea, and kind of like a little bit like pros and cons sort of, but like just why you're disclosing it and the purpose that's serving, and in the different kind of contexts of disclosure. Please refer also to last week's video because I talked a lot about that, and I talked about the purpose of disclosing to people who weren't your friends, but I went into a lot of the purpose, which is a lot of what this video is about as well. So, and I also talked about vlogging in that video. So, but for the sake of this week's video, what I want to do is I want to expand on this, and I want to talk about using boundaries when you're telling people, and I want to talk a little bit about my own experience with this, kind of being on either side of it. So just remember, first of all, that, telling someone is up to you. It's really your call ultimately. And when you do tell someone, you have to figure out why you're telling them and what purpose it's serving you. I think that it's important to use wise judgment when telling people. And remember that the way that you tell one person might not be the way you tell another. So really try to discern between your needs and others' roles in your life. With some people, I think going into more detail, and I don't mean graphic, just simply more, might serve a purpose for you because it might be a challenge to you, a necessary challenge. It might ultimately serve the purpose of letting others understand, letting them in, and coming out of hiding, so to speak. So sometimes it's better to tell people more. But with some people, telling them less is better. So you might be tempted to tell them more because your eating disorder is trying to be competitive or proud in some way. And in that case, purposefully disclosing less while still explaining the basics and really working on those skills interpersonally is going to benefit you, and then you can see and you can observe how you feel after you've done it, and during it, and you can feel knowing that you didn't give your eating disorder the upper hand and you gave yourself the best shot at being supported. Boundaries. They are so important. You want to respect the boundary of the person, your boundaries of the person that you're telling, and you want your own boundaries to be respected as well. So if the person that you're telling, for example, also struggles with an eating disorder, just one blanket rule, I think, is to stay away from numbers or specific body stuff or specific rituals or behaviors that you think might trigger them. Basically anything that you feel might trigger you if it were switched, more or less. Another way to respect boundaries is by asking the person how much they would feel comfortable hearing. Then you can gauge how confiding in them fits both of your needs. And if they are asking too many personal questions or starting to make you feel uncomfortable or starting to make you feel like they're probing, you have every right to assert your own boundaries and say that you feel uncomfortable disclosing anything more. It doesn't mean that you have to ruin your relationship with them or walk away or feel like it went negatively, but I think that, setting that boundary and just saying simply, I'm not going to tell you anything more, or however you might say that, will benefit you both and create a better understanding and respect. If you're telling someone for a professional reason, like that you need to take a leave from work to go to a treatment, it's up to you how much to disclose. There's no real professional rule in place that says you need to disclose your specific struggles, your specific diagnosis. That's not, sorry, I keep going here. In terms of legality, I don't really think there's a law that says you need to do that. So don't let yourself be pressured into saying too much. You can simply say that you're struggling with health issues. And that's what I did. I did have to take a leave from work at one point, and that's what I told them. I did expand afterwards, but they were fine knowing that as well. They didn't pressure me. Again, like I was, if you feel more comfortable with the person, and if you have a history with them, or if you and they have had personal conversations, or your personalities match up in such a way that you feel you can trust them, then tell them if you feel like that would help you. Whomever you are telling, take a moment to assess their reaction every once in a while as the conversation progresses. Also, take a moment to check in with yourself. You might ask them, is this okay to hear? You want to make sure that neither of you feels unnecessarily overwhelmed, which is different than just feeling uncomfortable. It's okay to feel uncomfortable in certain contexts, and it might even be helpful, but the goal is to stay grounded, and in some cases, it might be good to come back to it at another time, knowing that there's a mutual understanding and respect. You also want to let them ask questions. Keep in mind that sometimes their questions might seem like judgments. And it's okay to recognize this and to understand that it comes from a lack of understanding from them. And it's also okay to nicely correct them. This will serve both of you and possibly prevent negative emotions from building up inside of you. So be direct and allow yourself to be vulnerable to the degree of which the relationship allows. It is also important to ask yourself if you're telling someone because you want their support in your recovery, or if you're telling them from a confessional standpoint as someone who doesn't believe or have the will to recover. So are you seeking their help in becoming willing? Are you seeking their help in just allowing you to have your voice? What are you looking for from them? How would you feel if you tell them as someone without willingness? What would you expect from them? And how would you feel knowing that they knew later than that moment that you're telling them? Would you want to take it back? Would you feel a need to hide yourself even more? Don't let yeses or nos to these questions lead you to a black or white answer. Just think about them and come up with the best answer for yourself, not for your eating disorder. If you tell someone, if you tell a friend, this is kind of how I feel about it and what I've learned in therapy. I've gone to my therapist about this particular situation as somebody being told, and this is kind of what I was told too. So I think that telling a friend comes with a responsibility to being open to what they have to say. So going to someone for support means you're setting yourself up not to be enabled, and that person has to know that they are not an enabler. So, I've been an accidental enabler, and I've set up situations that allowed me to feel enabled, and either way, that is toxic. Unfortunately, the people that, I think it's really easy to manipulate a situation in an eating disorder so that the other person doesn't know they're being an enabler, which is when you really owe that responsibility to yourself because you're not fooling anyone. Well, you're fooling them, but you're not fooling yourself. Does that make sense? I said that wrong the first time, but I think it makes sense. Telling a friend comes with an agreement that you will try to let their support in. It also comes with an agreement that in some cases, and I don't mean this across the board, and I don't mean this as black and white as it sounds, but you'll do your best not to report behaviors back to them after you've done them. And I want to go into this a little bit because many people might be watching this and think, oh no, I've done this. I've done it too. But I think the intentions are very important to look at. I think that, first of all, there's a difference between reporting and confessing. And I think that what I've done is more confessed, not so much reported. Reporting, I feel, is like when you're documenting your eating disorder under their watch, with no intention to yourself or to them that things will be any different next time. And this really hurts both of you. I'm not saying that it's never okay to tell someone I did this, but it comes with a responsibility to exhibit willingness and openness and make it more of an I did this and now I'm going to, etc., and I'm going to talk about it in therapy, etc. If your intention is only to tell them after the fact, it's not a healthy setup, and you're allowing them to passively enable you, and you may be triggering them as well, maybe without either of you knowing that consciously. If your intention is to seek out their support during an urge, you need to set up boundaries with them as to what feels okay for them to hear. You need to try to determine the level of specificity that's comfortable for both of you. They really need to know that you have some kind of treatment in place so that they don't feel responsible for your well-being. And if you're not in any treatment, let them know that you're open to their help in finding treatment or resources. Also, you might want to reach out to somebody else and let them know they're not the only one that knows about this. So as far as some of my personal experience goes with this, I've told people that I had an eating disorder. Even when I was in therapy and I wasn't ready to get better, I told people anyway, close friends, because I was going through something and I needed to talk about it. And this was mostly in college. Not everybody does this. I felt like I really needed to do it. The people that I told were usually very supportive, and I knew they knew. I told friends and I told a couple of professors that I trusted. And I did tell a professor once because I was trying to get an extension or not an extension, but whatever that's called, when you don't get the credit for the class, but you could do it later. I forgot the name of that. But yeah, I told people for that purposes, and so that person obviously didn't go into much detail. But with the other people that I told, I knew in the aftermath, I knew that they knew, and even though I wasn't ready to get better in that moment, I did feel like they were a lifeline because they knew, and I did feel connected. They knew that if I went to hang out with them, that there was an understanding in that moment, and that they were helping me just by being company. And they knew I was doing something good for myself by not being alone. And that was all. We didn't talk about it in detail. But of course, friendships with an eating disorder are always compromised. And so there was only so far that could go. I think the real seeking of support came coupled with the willingness to recover, and that's how the friendships lasted. And, if people knew, even if we didn't talk about it really, it was present all the time. I wasn't much fun to be around. There was really a cap on how much I could be with people. And there was their knowledge that I would likely engage in behaviors after they or I left hanging out with each other, which is highly uncomfortable and helpless, and I can't imagine what else to that person. So, I've been on the other side of that too, but it's still hard for me to imagine what that was like when it was me. So be careful. Understand the effect that your telling will have, the best that you can anyway. Understand what is appropriate for them to hear. Think about what your dynamic might be after the conversation. Will it be better? Will it be awkward, uncomfortable? That doesn't have to be a bad thing, just consider it. Consider why you're telling, for support, for empathy, for concern, to feel less alone, to be helped with resources. Or are you fastening yourself tighter to the eating disorder? So remember that the purpose of telling is to build on your relationship with others, to reach outward, not in, to take yourself outside of the eating disorder, not just to get tighter with the eating disorder. So consider who is being validated, you or your eating disorder. Consider whether you're ready to tell the person if they're triggering you and you're in their response, if you're not ready to correct them in their triggering response and you see it as an opportunity, then reconsider telling them or reconsider expanding on that because it's serving your eating disorder. Or go and tell someone who won't give the eating disorder the opportunity to latch on. So I hope this helped. Again, it's a bit long, but hey, that rain comment in the beginning was totally worth it, I think. So, all right, well, have a great week, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.